Göbekli Tepe, brother, if there is such a thing as an ancient conspiracy theory, it's this.
Among the biggest nightmares for modern historians and archaeologists is the famous anomaly known as Göbekli Tepe. For decades, it has changed our understanding of human history and made it impossible to explain how the first civilization came to be. This archaeological killjoy is older than Stonehenge by at least 6,000 years and the Egyptian pyramids by over 7,000 years. Yet it has encrypted information that no one has been able to decipher until today. What message was buried beneath this site, and what hidden warnings does it hold for the modern world? Stay with us as we decode the ancient mysteries and puzzles of Göbekli Tepe, the hidden chamber that changes everything. Göbekli Tepe, as we know it, was built around 12,800 BC by various hunter-gatherers from various societies and is made up of massive stone pillars arranged in circles. Some of these stones weigh more than 15 tons, implying that humans over 13,000 years ago already had technologies more impressive than the tools used to build the Great Pyramids. But here comes the part that blows the mind. You see, modern historians and archaeologists have studied this location for decades, but each discovery has brought up even more questions about the history of our species. However, June 2025 was the month that changed everything, as the recent discoveries by various experts showed that Göbekli Tepe was humanity's first temple with religious ceremonies aimed at studying celestial events and discovering the laws of mathematics. According to the scholars in charge of the operation, Dr. Elena Vasquez and Dr. Martin Sweatman, the spiral chamber recently found within the site shows that Göbekli Tepe was most likely the first stellar observatory used by mankind for studying the stars and predicting future events. According to the carvings and symbols found within the underground caves, one of those predictions was a natural disaster, and the large structures found above were built as a warning. The message from the past was clear. Those who built Göbekli Tepe had just survived something catastrophic and wanted to make sure those who found it would survive when it happened again. Something happened 12,000 years ago that we've missed for so long, one that changes our timeline of human evolution, even though it makes the most sense compared to what we've just found. Our mainstream understanding of how modern civilization came to be has always been quite simple. Mankind developed the art of agriculture to always have access to food. Then people lived together in caves and later learned to build houses. Then various houses were built together to form societies. Various societies developed cultures. Then those cultures grew into various religions and systems of thought. And from those distinct cultures and religions, we now have modern civilization. But with the recent discoveries, we now have a new timeline to deal with. Humans somehow started with religion as a means of trying to know the future. Then they built a temple to honor that lifestyle, formed communities of people who shared the same idea, and then developed farming and agriculture to sustain their much larger numbers. Naturally, these large crowds of people needed larger settlements for their families, and the development of those settlements led to the small ancient civilizations that would become the bedrock of written history as we know it. This might sound complicated, so let's go through it one step at a time. Found at the site today are multiple circular enclosures with large pillars made of limestone carved and put there by humans over 14,000 years ago. These builders somehow carved, transported, and erected these massive stones with tools made of stone and wood. More interestingly, there is no evidence of homes, camps, kitchens, or burial grounds located anywhere close to the site. Rather, the evidence shows that people traveled from miles away to worship there, carrying along with them the large stones piece by piece to form what we see there today. Based on our most trusted ways of studying history, it is as if the ancients, for some reason, decided to build an ancient cathedral for meeting regularly, and then suddenly decided not to live anywhere near it. By our understanding, that doesn't make any sense. and this is just one out of several difficult mysteries of this site. The ancient puzzles of Göbekli Tepe. Göbekli Tepe was first recognized as an ancient site during a large-scale project in 1963. This project was conducted by the universities of Istanbul and Chicago, and Peter Benedict described the site as a location dating back to the Byzantine period, a continuation of the Roman Empire in the East. Ironically, after more research, their conclusions were much worse than what they had said earlier. To them, mankind's oldest temple was nothing more than the remains of a medieval cemetery. Sadly, that remained the common narrative for 31 years. For 3 decades, nobody knew that these so-called medieval stones were carved by people closer to the last ice age than the medieval period. Interestingly enough, this mind-blowing error would be the common narrative until October 1994, the month when one man named Klaus Schmidt, a German archaeologist, chose to re-examine the location. Klaus, at the time, had been excavating another historic site when it was about to be flooded by a dam project, and his years of experience in modern times gave him the edge in recognizing common mistakes made by older archaeologists. And among the biggest myths he debunked that month was the thought that the stones were set up during the medieval period. Klaus instead proposed that the stones were much older. And not just that, what archaeologists discovered earlier were nothing more than the top parts of massive pillars buried under thick soils that had accumulated for thousands of years. Not long after, a team of archaeologists led by Klaus, with permission from the German Archaeological Institute, started excavating the area. Each day was more exciting than the last, with thrilling new discoveries and even more frightening questions coming up along the way. Because of Turkey's ever-changing weather, the excavation wasn't done continually, but twice a year. 2 months during spring, they would start work and resume in the last 2 months of the coming fall. 2008 and 2009 marked the peak of excitement in this process, with more details about the origins of these structures. To put it simply, Göbekli Tepe was a temple where people gathered to worship animal spirits for guidance on what the future held. But as we shall see, there was a big flaw in this explanation. In over 25 years of working at the site, there was no evidence of farming or animals anywhere close. The people who built these structures at such a primitive time were hunters, who lived at a time when agriculture hadn't become a lifestyle. Yet this structure was built with stones heavier than the ones used for the Giza pyramids. There were no solid explanations for this problem until March 2025, when Dr. Martin Sweatman and his team made a surprising discovery. Göbekli Tepe wasn't just built before cities and farming, but also before humans were fully capable of systematic observation. Thanks to modern tools like quantum radar, the team was able to look underneath the ancient stones without needing to dig everything out. The radar showed a perfectly circular chamber, and if the dating system was correct, it had been sealed for almost 13,000 years. This chamber was 20 feet under the last enclosure dug up by Klaus and his team since 2008. And it wasn't just circular, but formed a spiraling pathway going much deeper. Even though this chamber was buried for over 10,000 years, there were no damages caused by earthquakes, floods, or geological shifts. It seemed those who built the chamber designed it with all natural events and disasters in mind, believing that humans from future generations would need access to whatever they had stored there. This shocking level of forward thinking from primitive humans has never been found in modern archaeological history. It easily destroys our long-held assumptions that humans from 12,000 years ago were just primitives who hadn't evolved beyond being stupid. It turned out that our ancestors had figured out a way of recording and preserving information in a building that puts our modern-day cranes and construction equipment to shame. The spiral pathway leading into the circular chamber showed that humans by then had already figured out the laws of mathematics. However, that was just the tip of the iceberg. Accurate maps of the stars. Excited to find out more, the team extended the operation from a few weeks to 3 months. With the close eyes of the sconce community on their shoulders, these archaeologists were now on a race against time. The process only required digging through 20 feet of dirt, but it took 3 months to complete because of how delicate it was. When the researchers finally hit past the seal covering the inner chamber, the team started examination immediately. On the walls of the interior were hundreds of carved symbols, different from the surface decorations in the area. Unlike the animal shoes and T-shaped pillars found above, these symbols were astronomical charts, lunar cycle diagrams, and mathematical sequences carved well enough to impress a Renaissance artist. These drawings were so accurate and impressive that the team thought at first that they were made not long before the excavation. But thanks to radiocarbon dating techniques, the experts concluded that everything found within the cave was at least 10,000 years old. Contrary to what they first thought about the area as being a strictly religious structure, there were no altars or representations set up for worship. There were also no tools, weapons, or domestic vessels in the cave, proving that this place wasn't built for people to live in. All that was found in the cave was information. From stone symbols to artistic depictions, it was clear that this enclosure was an ancient library of knowledge. It was humanity's first attempt at creating a reliable record of important information, and the information they gathered from studying the stars alone was accurate enough to make modern NASA engineers jealous. One of the things they found was a relic called Pillar 43, also known as the Vulture Stone. It stands in the fourth enclosure, hidden underground, and has a lot of things carved into it. On the surface of this stone are several carvings, each shaped like a small V in a strange pattern. What did this mean exactly? According to Dr. Martin Sweatman, a specialist from the University of Edinburgh who closely studied Göbekli Tepe in 2024, each of those marks stood for a day. Following this principle, his team counted 354 on the body, with 10 more found on the lower parts, and 1 more in the head of the bird found on the large stone. Add these numbers together, and you have 365 days, a complete year with 12 lunar months and 11 extra days. The final V that is found on the head of the bird stands for the summer solstice, which the bird symbolically stands for as a whole. This makes this rock the world's oldest calendar, possibly even the first. But even more interesting are the other animals carved into the sacred pillar. Among them are foxes and names arranged around the central spiral. Martin Sweatman believed each of these animals stood for a specific group of stars and meteors. One image, for example, shows 27 snakes and foxes, which in astrology stands for the Taurid meteor stream. This is linked with the most dramatic meteor shower in early human history. We know this because the snake and fox carvings mapped across Pillar 43 align almost perfectly with the meteor signature that emerges near Aquarius and Pisces. But it goes deeper than that. Martin Sweatman matched these animals with the zodiac group of stars, but the information was too complicated to decode. However, thanks to advanced computer data analysis, it was discovered that the carvings were star maps that accurately matched the celestial positions used during the Younger Dryas period over 12,000 years ago. This was an era in geological history when the world had grown very cold. During that time, it seemed our green planet was returning to the Ice Age. This period of rapid cooling lasted for over a millennium. The Younger Dryas period was so bad that it almost wiped off the human race. With that period in mind, what was the function of this underground cave built to contain nothing but information? Keep watching to find out. Sweatman's theory. According to Dr. Martin Sweatman, Göbekli Tepe was built as an observatory during that period of great struggle with the environment. Humans suffered a lot during this period, as there was little to no growing food. Our planet back then was an almost barren wasteland. Ecosystems were collapsing, and humans were forced to live in very large groups away from their communities. Scientists believe it was during this time that the rest of the animals from the Ice Age were killed off. This, of course, includes the mammoth and saber-tooth cats. This underground cave underneath was an ancient observatory and watchdog facility. During these difficult times, the ancients were busy studying celestial events, performing complex calculations, and recording everything they saw and discovered. The surrounding T-shaped structures on the surface were simply landmarks for those curious about the information they had collected and hidden for preservation. The ancient humans had managed to live through a very difficult event and wanted to make sure we would as well when it happens again. With this in mind, Martin matched the animals found on the pillar with the constellations visible during the Younger Dryas event that started around 10,950 BC. During that year, according to advanced computer simulations, the team found out that the sun rose over the vulture's wing constellation at the summer solstice circa. And what was the bird carved into Pillar 43? That's right, a vulture. Martin Sweatman's intuition was right all along. Pillar 43 was an ancient calendar that recorded all the star movements, meteor showers, and natural disasters of the Stone Age long before the Greeks or the Sumerians perfected the art of astronomy. More mind-blowing is the fact that Pillar 43 predicted the future by charting the wobble of the planet's axis 10,000 years before Hipparchus rediscovered it along with the laws of trigonometry in 100 BC. But as exciting as it is, not all archaeologists agree. Some of them believe Martin Sweatman is taking things too far by seeing patterns in animals and shapes that were not intended. For all we know, applying the rules of modern star charts to symbols from the Stone Age isn't a good idea. But even with that in mind, the physical evidence comes way too close to be a coincidence, especially considering the number of factors that fall in line with this. We have a solid count of the days of a year, the marker of the summer solstice, repeating symbols across different statues found in the cave that align with Pillar 43 and carbon dating techniques that point to the Dryas era, along with the alignment of stars in the sky at that period. Based on all the data presented, these findings are clearly not guesses, but repeatable observations that prove the astronomical interpretation is at least possible. Dr. Sweatman's conclusions were that Pillar 43 and all the other stones found in the enclosure were teaching tools and memory aids for the ancients. By carving days, months, and special events, knowledge was easily preserved to guide future generations through different survival strategies. He proves this by pointing to the similar markings on other pillars at historic places not too far, such as Göbekli Tepe and Seybürk. And he doesn't stop there. He believes that Göbekli Tepe's underground chambers are just parts of a much bigger network of observatories dedicated to studying the stars, worshipping them, and using them to tell the future. Other scholars believe that ancient humans had seen signs in the sky that were terrifying enough for them to carry 15-ton stones up a hill and range them in perfect circles. The message was so urgent that the man stepped beyond the natural timeline by building a cave so advanced long before historians believe the wheel was invented. But as exciting as this discovery was, things were just getting started. Given that the ancient world 10,000 years ago was much more advanced than we give credit for, there was a much bigger question to answer. Just how advanced were the ancients who built Göbekli Tepe and its underground interiors, and how did they pull it off? Throughout June, the team worked around the clock to carefully study everything they could find in the spiral chamber. But it didn't take long for them to realize they were in over their heads. The symbols used in studying the stars were far too complex to decipher. It was so complicated that it required specialists who understood celestial mechanics to tell what it meant. For the first time, archaeologists had to work alongside astrophysicists to decode ancient symbols put down by people historians claimed didn't know how to write. The research continues to this day, and the implications found so far force us to think again about our evolutionary history. It seems we've assumed too much about our intellectual development, social tendencies, and organization, along with our relationship with cosmic threats. Think about it. Societies of hunters 12,000 years ago had studied the stars enough to understand connections between celestial events and global disasters. If that is true, and we can be sure of it, then what other skills did they have that got buried in history? What other breakthroughs did they achieve that we've never thought of? And most importantly, what kind of warnings were they trying to communicate to us that we still haven't figured out yet? Today, archaeologists are working on the answer, and until then, we'll just have to wait and see what our earliest ancestors had in store for our modern society. So, what do you think? Are the messages about future events, or are they just forgotten discoveries in astronomy that got buried in history and uncovered in recent times? Let us know in the comments down below. If you enjoyed the video, please make sure you like, share, and subscribe. Also, click on the next video shown on your screen. You will enjoy it.